versus evil. That is the narrative that the typical story puts on the subject of fossil fuels versus renewable energy, making one who takes the side of tradition seem like it's a sinister decision. Well, it's common sense to consider that taking natural sources such as water, wind, and sun is a great idea. And it's also smart to think that the process to do such a thing would take a lot of time, a lot of research, and a lot of money. And that we need to keep the production of oil and natural gases in the United States. 3 reasons to argue that the importance are the revenue the industry brings supports entire towns, and the taxes that these states receive from the oil and gas companies play a major impact in the local communities. Another argument is that the time and cost that it would take to transition to 100% renewable energy. My last argument is that aside from gasoline and diesel, there are thousands of everyday products that require petroleum in its manufacturing process. Now, when you think of small towns that look lucky to have stores such as Walmart or McDonald's in them, you would typically think of poverty. Now, when you see these towns along the Gulf Coast, for example, or up in North Dakota or even Alaska, the small town image is just a front. These states have a heavy population of oil and gas field workers with the average annual salary of $75,000. That is an amazing take home considering that the cost of living in these areas are typically much less than the closest metropolis by them. Not only are the employees bringing in circulating money, in 2019, the industry as a whole purchased $538 billion in domestic goods and services from virtually every business sector in the country. So then it's safe to say that the taxes paid by the oil and gas industry must contribute to the local economy. In fact, all taxes paid by the sector contribute to the state's success, including infrastructure, water conservation programs, schools, and first responders. In Texas alone, taxes and mineral royalties paid by the industry in the last 10 years totaled $116 billion. 20 to 30 years is the average projection to convert to 100% renewable energy. If we continue to push the argument to shut down producing gas and oil domestically, now we will be importing 100% of crude this country needs to run efficiently. $4 to $6 trillion. That is the average expected amount to transition to 100% renewable. Now imagine that the state taxes paid from the industry in Texas in the last decade, which equaled that $116 billion, just vanished because we are no longer producing U.S. oil. That's $116 billion that now has to come from different sectors to pay for the local verticals such as schools and first responders. Now think about the $538 billion that were circulated in 2019 into virtually every business sector in the country by the oil and gas industry. That money will be non-existent without domestic production. The point is that it makes more sense to continue bolstering our economy by continuing to being energy dependent and using the billions of dollars the industry flows through the economy to push towards a $4 to $6 trillion price tag that is expected for green energy transitions. Lastly, it's easy to say that we can all just drive electric vehicles and ride our bicycles to work every day to help us pull from the demand of crude in our country. But that's cutting the solution very short. 1 barrel of petroleum amounts to 42 gallons. Out of that 42 gallons, 19.4 gallons of gasoline is made. The rest of it, which if you do the math is more than half, is used to make thousands of everyday products that even a Tesla driver with solar panels all across his roof uses. Non-fuel oil is used in so many items that the average American uses 3.5 gallons of petroleum every day without even realizing it. Petroleum is used in clothes, phones, soaps, computers, toys, and even hygiene products. Thousands and thousands of items have petroleum involved in the manufacturing process. That's something that solar panels and windmills can't compensate for. To think that over half of every barrel is used for items that we use daily, not related to gasoline at all, makes me really think that our wallets deserve to feel a little bit fuller by using domestic oil to produce those items instead of being dependent of countries such as Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and China to drive up the prices and sell us what we already have in our possession. In conclusion, I do agree that when the time comes that we can function off 100% renewable energy, then we should pull the trigger on it. However, until those decades and those trillions of dollars come up, I believe that is vital that we do not need to turn the energy sector into some kind of political war, and that we need to stop trying to shut down the industry. This is the livelihood of families, the independence of this country. These are real decisions with real consequences that we are making, not just a move to get votes. This is how we need to look at it from a logical perspective. If we stop producing, just know that the other power players will not. This is a very, very tiny list, literally, of a partial list of the items used that needed for petroleum production. Questions and answers. How strict is the government on operations on an oil rig? Well, every single detail in the operation, it has to be documented to the government entity, BSEE, which is the Bureau of Safety and Environmental Agency, but they also perform routine and random checks on every oil rig out there on the water. And they're looking at record keeping, they're looking at the procedures for what they're going to do to that well, the fluids they're going to put into that well, the equipment that's going to be used to control that well. They're looking at water bottles on the deck if it's going to blow over and cause marine debris. Between BSEE and the United States Coast Guard, they do frequent sweeps to make sure that the chance of anything going wrong, like what happened to Macondo or the deep water, the BP oil spill, as some people know it, never happens again. BSEE was actually created after the BP oil spill. The second question is, what is the U.S. petroleum consumption? This is the daily consumption, and the average is 20 million barrels a day. 15 million of those barrels were domestically produced. The other 5 million were imported from other countries to meet the energy needs. And the third question is, do oil reserves replenish? And this is a big argument that goes along the fact that they say that oil and gas industries are sucking the earth dry. In recent studies, scientists discovered that oil indeed replenishes from deep within the earth's crust, and it creeps its way back into the empty reserves. I do believe, just from working in the oil industry, that there was a surveying company out there. I remember hearing a story about this. There's a survey company out there that they send these ROVs down in the water, and they just scan the depths. Just a bunch of sensors that they put down there. And there was an empty reserve in the Mississippi Canyon, I believe, in the Gulf of Mexico. And that reserve has been empty for quite some time, but when they sent these ROVs down there to survey the land, pretty much looking for new exploration opportunities to drill a new well, they found that the empty reserve was actually full again with oil, and that's when they started looking into this study. We're excited. That partial list that I had the slide of the products made from petroleum was from WGHBETC.com. The cost of transitioning 100% renewable energy was from the Institute for Energy Research.org. I had a graph on there, a chart on there that kind of gave a breakdown of the barrel of oil and what it is directed towards, along with some of the items that is used for non-fuel oils. And that was from BOME.com, and there's an article, a chart that they put out as why is oil important, and also referenced some parts of an article from the Oil Man magazine, and that was the new government report that highlights importance of oil and natural gas to Americans' daily lives, the U.S. and the economy. That was the article that they put out in October 2020. Thank you.